What if Steve Jobs had never founded Apple? Imagine a world where the iconic fruit-shaped logo never existed. No iPhones, no MacBooks, and no Siri making sarcastic comments when you ask her to tell you a joke. What would our lives look like today? Well, let's take a journey to an alternate reality where Steve Jobs, instead of founding Apple, decided to pursue a completely different path. Maybe he became a monk, or perhaps he opened a smoothie shop called Steve's Juicy Fruits. But whatever he did, one thing is certain: the tech world would never be the same. First off, let's talk about the personal computer. Back in the late 1970s, when computers were massive machines that filled entire rooms and looked like they belonged on a spaceship, there was no sleek, user-friendly design in sight. In this alternate timeline, IBM still rules the roost, and instead of a personal computer sitting on your desk, you'd probably have a giant, clunky box that only your math genius cousin knows how to operate. It would have a green, blinking cursor that seems to mock you every time you press the wrong key. Forget about a mouse. What even is that? Touchscreens? Not a chance. We're still stuck in the land of command lines and cryptic error messages. Microsoft would still be around, of course. Bill Gates would continue his quest to put a computer on every desk, but without Apple to challenge him, things would move at a snail's pace. Windows would be, well, Windows, but with more blue screens of death and even clunkier software updates. Imagine Windows Vista, but worse. Now let's talk about phones. You know those old flip phones we all loved in the early 2000s? The ones with physical buttons and tiny screens that could barely handle Snake? Yeah, we'd still be using those. The smartphone revolution, it never happened. No iPhone to show the world that a phone could be more than just a phone. No app store, no mobile games, no endless scrolling through social media while waiting in line at the coffee shop. In fact, social media as we know it might not even exist. Twitter would be a strange concept, 140 characters typed out on a T9 keypad, pass. Instead, we might be living in a world where BlackBerry is king. Business people everywhere would still be clutching their beloved BlackBerry devices, furiously typing out emails with their thumbs on those tiny plastic keyboards. It's not as cool as pulling out an iPhone, but hey, it gets the job done. Meanwhile, the rest of us would be stuck with basic phones that could maybe, just maybe, take a grainy photo if the lighting was just right. And what about music? Remember the days of carrying around a bulky CD player hoping it wouldn't skip every time you hit a bump on the sidewalk? Without Apple, the iPod would have never existed. No sleek, portable music player that could hold thousands of songs. Instead, we'd still be lugging around our CD collections, or worse, dealing with those cheap MP3 players that could barely hold an album's worth of music before crashing. And let's not even talk about iTunes. We'd be back to the Wild West of illegal downloads and Napster lawsuits. The music industry would be a mess, and artists would still be relying on physical album sales to make a living. In the world of design, things would be, well, boring. Apple's obsession with clean lines, simplicity, and elegance changed the way we think about products. Without Steve Jobs' vision, we'd be stuck with gadgets that look like they were designed by someone who never quite got over the 80s. Boxy, beige, and cluttered, every device would be a sad reminder of what could have been. Even the advertising world would feel different. Those sleek, minimalist Apple ads that became a cultural phenomenon, gone. Instead, we'd have more cheesy, over-the-top commercials with bad jingles that get stuck in your head for days. Let's not forget the impact on the entertainment industry. Pixar, the beloved animation studio responsible for classics like and wouldn't exist in the same way. Steve Jobs played a crucial role in Pixar's early days, helping to shape it into the powerhouse it is today. Without him, who knows what kind of movies we'd be watching. Maybe we'd still be stuck in the era of traditional animation with hand-drawn characters and no sign of the CGI magic that has captivated audiences for decades. And what about the impact on Hollywood? With no Pixar, Disney wouldn't have had the same renaissance in the 90s, and the entire landscape of animated films would be different. The ripple effects don't stop there. The app economy as we know it would never have taken off. Without the iPhone and the App Store, there would be no incentive for developers to create the thousands of apps we now rely on every day. We'd be living in a world where "there's an app for that" is a phrase that never entered our lexicon. Want to order food, track your fitness, or learn a new language? Sorry, you're out of luck. You'd have to do things the old-fashioned way, like actually calling a restaurant to place an order or writing down your workout routine on a piece of paper. But it's not all doom and gloom. Without Apple, maybe some other tech visionary would have stepped up to fill the void. Maybe we'd have a world where Google Glass is the next big thing, and everyone is walking around with futuristic glasses that display notifications right in front of their eyes. Or perhaps Elon Musk would have decided to dive into the consumer tech world earlier, giving us a Tesla phone or even a Neuralink-powered brain device that lets you control your gadgets with just a thought. It's possible that the absence of Apple would have pushed other companies to innovate in different ways, leading to a tech landscape that's just as exciting but totally different from what we know today. Of course, Steve Jobs didn't just create products, he created a culture. Apple's success inspired countless entrepreneurs to chase their dreams and build companies that would change the world. Without Jobs and Apple, Silicon Valley might not be the hub of innovation it is today. The startup culture that has fueled so much of our modern tech landscape could be far less vibrant, and the spirit of thinking differently might not be as celebrated. The impact of Jobs' absence would be felt in classrooms, boardrooms, and coffee shops where aspiring entrepreneurs gather to brainstorm the next big idea. His legacy of challenging the status quo and striving for perfection would be a glaring omission in the story of tech's rise. And let's not forget the little things. The quirky, seemingly insignificant details that Apple fans have come to love. No more Easter eggs hidden in software updates, no more obsession with the perfect shade of aluminum for the latest MacBook, and no more joy in watching an Apple keynote waiting for that moment when Jobs, or in our timeline Tim Cook, says, "One more thing." All of these small moments add up to a culture that feels in some ways like a family of millions of people worldwide who share a common love for a company that didn't just make products, but made products that mattered. In this alternate reality where Steve Jobs never founded Apple, we might still be living in a world where technology is just a tool, a means to an end, rather than something that enhances our lives in meaningful ways. We'd have functional gadgets, sure, but they wouldn't have the same soul. They wouldn't inspire us to create, to connect, and to think about what's possible. So what if Steve Jobs had never founded Apple? We'd be living in a world that's a little less shiny, a little less intuitive, and a lot less inspired. We'd still have technology, but it wouldn't have the same magic. The devices we use every day wouldn't be extensions of ourselves, they'd just be tools we tolerate. And maybe, just maybe, we'd be left wondering what could have been if that brilliant mind had decided to change the world instead of making smoothies.